Like how busy is Q4 for you? Like when it comes to compliance?
Yeah, it's pretty horrible.
Yeah.
There's a lot to do at the end of the
Yeah.
year, and then clients like to get things done off their
Yeah.
desk at the end of the year. So,
Yeah.
um, and then there's the regular running a business stuff that all seems to happen at the end of the
At
year.
the end of the year. Yeah. Yeah. It's like the benefits industry is an industry where we pack like 3/4 of the year's worth of work in one quarter. And I'm sure the folks that are joining can empathize and maybe feel that very, very deeply right now.
Yeah, that is the
Uh,
truth.
yeah. Well,
I
hey,
don't know, Brandon,
go
I
ahead.
don't know if you see this in the health space,
Yeah.
but I have been hearing that in the retirement industry,
Hmm.
record keepers are providing pricing discounts if you convert not at year end, but you do it at one of their quieter times of the year. You can get better pricing.
We've seen that sort of anecdotally, nothing that's been like, meaning like with carriers saying, hey, we're
Yeah.
interested in doing a 7/1 cycle time versus a 1/1. Nothing really operationalized. But super interesting. I think it's a very smart move to just, we need to start smoothing out like what that calendar looks like.
Right.
Uh, Well, I think we've got folks trickling in. We've got almost 40 folks on the line. I think we've got 280 people signed up. So as folks are joining, just first want to say thank you all for joining. John and I were just empathizing how crazy Q4 is for all of us in the benefits industry, and we've got we've got hundreds of folks that are dialing in from all over the country. And so first, I want to just say thank you for taking the time with us as we're leading up to the busy holiday season, trying to close out all of those, all those last minute items. One thing that's usually a lot of fun is we've got folks calling in from all over the country. So while we're waiting, we'll give a minute or two for folks to trickle in. Why don't you go ahead and just drop into the chat where you're calling in from? I'd love to sort of see where our audience is coming in from. It's helpful to have context. And maybe John, you and I can kick off. John, where are you calling in from on your side of the?
Oh, from the very fun location of Omaha, Nebraska.
Nice. I
Yeah.
love that. Auspicious location.
Right in the middle of nowhere.
No, I dig it. That's cool. And I'm dialing in from Park City, Utah, where I'm looking out the window. We've got 8 inches of snow. So winter is definitely hit here.
Fantastic.
It's fun to see. We've got folks from all over. Maria is calling in from Dayton. We've got Christy in Central Florida. Will Schaefer in Napa. We got Washington. A lot of fun. Looks like Cassie has family in Omaha, so you're in good company, John, with some Omahans.
Yeah, I just saw a client pop up too from Omaha. I'm gonna have to watch what I say.
I know, definitely. We've got actually Nava's got a lot of clients on this call too, which is really cool. I think it speaks to just the maybe the importance and the timeliness of the topic. So we're 3 minutes in. I think we've got good critical mass on the audience side. Thank you all for joining. Lucy, Leslie, Niraja, Mike, great to see you in the chat. And why don't we kick off? Super excited to be chatting about what we think about is like, what are the must knows when it comes to benefits compliance going into and through Q1. And I think one of the things that's really neat about this conversation that we're going to have is how informed it's been by specific tactical questions that have come from you, our HR community. HR leaders across the country answered the call around what questions they wanted answered. So we've actually directly incorporated those questions into this content. So we're not just throwing a bunch of compliance data at you that you kind of forget out one ear. We're answering tactical questions that your peers have, and if your peers have them, you might have them as well. We're going to get into some more details here, but first, let me just do introductions quickly. I'm Brandon Weber. I'm CEO of Nava Benefits. And for those of you that are just getting to know Nava, we're the first benefits brokerage that's oriented entirely around the mission to provide high quality, affordable healthcare to all Americans. And we're doing that by bringing the tools, playbook, and cutting edge technology from America's largest employers down market to mid-size employers, oriented around how do we make great benefits easy to understand, easy to deploy, easy to manage and support, because the HR teams that we support have so many things on their plate. And I'm really fired up to be joined by one of the best ERISA attorneys in the country, Schembari. Together, we're going to be unpacking what are the critical compliance work items you need to focus on over the next 90 days, how to get those things done, as well as answering sort of the most asked questions around compliance from you and your peers. John, thank you so much for joining us. I know you're incredibly busy right now. You got a ton of work. We do a lot of work with John and his team too. So, when clients sign up for Nava, they're signing up to get a real depth of experience around the ERISA side and the compliance side, of the work of managing and running great benefits plans. But maybe before we dive in, can you just share a few words about yourself and your background?
Yeah, thanks, Brandon. So I am a 30+ year employee benefits lawyer. This is all I've done since even before I got out of law school. During interning in law school, all I've done is employee benefits law, first in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and then the last 25 years or so in Omaha, Nebraska. And I do it at a national law firm by the name of Kutak Rock. We've got offices all across the country, and I work primarily out of the Omaha, Nebraska office, and I'm really glad to be here.
I'm glad to have you. We've been doing good work together on behalf of probably a lot of the folks that are on this call too, are clients. And you get a big fan in Christy. I just love Kutak Rock. That's awesome. So one last thing before we dive into the content, we got a fun thing. Since compliance is basically no one's favorite topic, no one loves to spend time on compliance. We decided that we were just going to spice up this conversation, and we're going to be giving away 5 $100 Amazon gift cards. And anyone who asks a question on this conversation in chat is eligible for that. So use that chat. And for the folks that graciously submitted questions ahead of time, you're going to be automatically signed up for that. So the folks that win, this could be a random drawing. We're going to email you this evening. So hopefully just a little bit of extra love there. How do you get compliance to be fun? You throw money at it, I guess is maybe the tactic there. So to kick off, I'm gonna maybe make this easy for some of you folks. Why don't you just drop into the chat the biggest compliance question keeping you up at night, and we'll sort of track those things. Feel free to just drop them in there, and we'll see about getting to those. Hopefully, we're going to answer a bunch of those questions too throughout this conversation. Okay, John, let's dive in. We got a ton here. So, as of today, we've got about 2 weeks left in the year. What, if anything, should be very focused in HR teams on checking off the list when it comes to compliance before we hit that new year?
Yeah, the good news is that most of the hard work has been done. Open enrollment for calendar year plans is probably already closed, so that's good news. But there's one new thing this year that not everybody is going to be familiar with and may not be done yet. In 2020, as part of the Consolidated Appropriations Act, Congress put into place something called this gag clause prohibition. And let me just give a little background on what that is.
Thank you.
Part of this law was designed to increase transparency in healthcare quality and costs. And one of the ways that Congress felt that they could do that was by removing contractual provisions that prevented the disclosure of financial arrangements between hospitals, doctors, insurance carriers, and also quality stuff. So in the past, if you wanted to go to a Blues and ask them, what do they pay this hospital? They wouldn't tell you. That was considered proprietary, and they would put in their contracts that the doctor or the hospital wouldn't tell you. That's called a gag clause. So Congress said no more gag clauses, and it went into effect in 2020. And what's really unique about this, I think, is that unlike most laws, when Congress passes a law, they say you shall not do something. That's all you have to do. Just don't do it. And then you comply with the law. Here, employers, not only do they have to comply with the law, but they have to attest to the federal government that they're complying with the law. So it's really a kind of a unique rule. What's also unique about this attestation, which has to happen by the end of this year, and this attestation, this first one that's due, is going to cover from the end of 2020, 21, 22, and 23. So if you had multiple carriers or you switched carriers in any of those 3 years, this is a little bit of work to make this attestation. The other unique part about it is that I would have expected the insurance companies to take care of this for sponsors. Certainly for fully insured plans, I thought it was a no-brainer. The insurance company would take care of it because they're the ones that would know whether their contracts have a gag clause or not.
Yeah.
As it turned out, very few insurance companies are actually making the attestation on behalf of employers. If you ask the insurance carrier, they might come back and tell you, don't worry about it, we don't have a gag clause.
Yep.
But they're not doing the actual attestation on behalf of the employer. So for anybody listening in the audience, if you haven't done the attestation yet, you need to probably first and foremost contact the carrier to see whether they've done it on your behalf. Unlikely. If they haven't, you should get confirmation that they don't have any gag clauses, and then you should take the steps to file this attestation electronically before the end of the year.
Very good context. I think we just had the question. So why don't we get through action items too? I think I want to hit this specific question. What do I need to do? I think Rian had this question. I was told my health plan carriers would be handling my gag clause attestation by my broker, but I haven't received any kind of confirmation. Should I be worried or doing anything? That's a perfect lead into what are the action items, and that I can give some of the context too. Yeah.
So the action items I would say is leverage your broker. Really work with your partner and have them do some of this work for you. So get in touch with your broker, ask your broker to get confirmation about whether the attestation is done.
Yeah.
If it's done, great. If it's not done, then work with them. They can help you do it. The attestation is not super difficult, but it is it's going to require a little bit of work, especially like I said, if you've changed carriers, if you've added a new PBM to the mix over the course of 3 years. This will be the hardest attestation you'll have to do because it covers 3 years. Going forward, it'll just be an annual attestation.
John, you want to add a little bit of context to this slide that we're looking at here? And then we've got a couple of good questions in the chat.
So Brandon, I think this slide is a Nava slide. I think this is a summary of some of your experiences working with some of the different organizations out there and whether or not those carriers will actually do the attestation. And some of them will, but you can see the difference between a carrier submission where the carrier will do it versus a client submission where the employer is going to have to do it. And again, not surprising on self-funded that they would all be client submission or level funded, which is also considered self-funded. But on those fully insured ones, it is a little surprising. You see that Humana over there on the far right.
Yeah, 100%. Well, like I said in chat, we're going to share out these slides with everyone. Aaron, if you go back a slide to the action items, just briefly, I think this is, so it's a big thing, I think, and Jenny in chat, I think said it well, which is you need to make sure that it was done. So if you were self-insured, you're going to have to make sure that attestation gets filed to the CMS web form. At Nava, we're sort of guiding our clients through this process, whether they're self-funded, level funded, or fully insured. So lean heavily on your broker partner, benefits partner to help project manage you through that process. Make sure you get the right answers there. And we also do, you saw that table, we also do the work to analyze which carriers actually require which types of things. A couple of quick good questions here. So first question from Sage, are we required to do this now if we have a medical year that's July to June?
Yeah, great question. It is a calendar year attestation. So yes, it is required to be done December 31.
Great. Yeah. So Sage, that's important. We don't get out of this on a non-calendar year plan year. Maybe a two-part question was, does this apply to businesses of all sizes? Is there any sort of carve out? Maybe
another good question, and unfortunately there is no carve out. So employer groups, it's got to be a group plan, not an individual, but a group plan of any size is subject to this rule.
Yeah, cool. And then the good question from Elizabeth, is this only for medical insurance or does it cover dental, vision, and other insurance as well?
Oh, that is a good question. I'm going to have to get back to you on that one. I'm not certain if it applies to the standalone dental or vision.
Yeah, and so Elizabeth, we'll circle back with an answer on that follow-up to this whole group. Our understanding is that it's medical only. At least that's been the sort of the thrust of the language so far.
Yeah, and prescription. So you could, some people have a separate prescription.
Yeah.
for them. So it's, I know medical prescription for sure. Just, I'm not 100% certain on dental and vision. I don't think so, but I'm not positive.
Mhm. Yep. Good stuff. I think we hit all of the tactical questions here. Rand, definitely, you should be doing something while you wait for confirmation. If you have a benefits broker, you should be going to them and saying, hey, I need to confirm that we're good on attestation. What are the next steps there? But it's definitely not just it. I wouldn't just sit and wait for it until January 1. Awesome. Thank you for that tactical advice there. That's kind of really the push over the next couple of weeks. Let's talk about Q1 of next year. What are the top things that HR needs to know, look out for, and start prepping for?
Yeah. So we were talking about this earlier, Brandon, how all of the work in HR seems to happen in the last couple of months of the year.
Mhm.
So that is true. When it comes to Q1 of 2024, it's a quieter time, but there are three things I think that employers should focus on. One is certainly a requirement. So if you are a group that had 50 or more full-time employee equivalents in 2022, then you're considered an what's called an applicable large employer for 2023. Same thing for 2023, you're going to be that for 2024. So if you had 50 or more full-time employee equivalents in 2022, you're an applicable large employer for 2023. You have some filing requirements. They refer to as 1095s, which go to employees, 1094s, which go to the IRS with the 1095s. It's a way for the IRS to determine whether you as an employer are complying with the pay or play requirements from the Affordable Care Act. So if you're a applicable large employer, you need to offer minimum essential coverage to at least 95% of your full-time employees to avoid one type of penalty. And then if you want to avoid all penalties, you need to offer minimum essential coverage that provides minimum value and is affordable to your employees. And if you do both of those things, you get rid of all your penalties. Otherwise, if your coverage is not minimum value or not affordable, then you might get a penalty. And these 1095s are required to go to the IRS so they can figure out whether you're going to get a penalty and you're going to get a bill from them. So if you are an applicable large employer, you should know that because it is based on last year or 2022 for 2023, you need to take steps to get your 1095 filings done. Most companies they're either a payroll provider or they'll go with an outsourced third party. Very few employers are doing it themselves.
Yeah.
So you'll need to get those done. Also in Q1, if you're not subject to it, now's a good enough time as any to count your employees in 2023 to see if you're going to be an applicable large employer for 2024. So you can be prepared. You're not waiting to the last minute to find a solution to get the 1095s filings done. So that's the first item that you got to pay attention to that because we've got deadlines. Carly is having nightmares over the 1095 requirements, it looks like. The second item to focus on, and not a lot of employers do this, and you're not going to offend me if you tell me you ignore this, but for those of you that require your employees to pay a portion of the premium for medical, dental, life, whatever benefit, chances are pretty good that you have your employees do that on a pre-tax basis. And the only way you can do that is through what's called a cafeteria plan, sometimes called a Section 125 plan, because that's the section of the Internal Revenue Code that applies. Some people might call it a POP plan or premium only plan. But bottom line is if you have employees paying premiums on a pre-tax basis, you do have a cafeteria plan. You don't know where it is. You may not have looked at it, but you do have one. And in addition to having one, there are non-discrimination testing rules that apply to those plans. This Q1 is a good time to start thinking about cafeteria plan testing for last year and maybe doing some planning for 2024, because you may have to make some tweaks if you're not passing. If the result of not passing the non-discrimination test is that technically the benefits that highly paid employees thought they were paying on a pre-tax basis are taxable. And that's a problem for the highly paid employees. It's also potentially a problem for the employer, because if it's taxable, you've got to put it on their W-2 and all that stuff. So get your non-discrimination testing done in Q1. And then the third item.
Hey, John.
Yeah.
Just real quick, because we got a couple of good tactical questions on that, and I know election review will be a big one. Jody asked, where can we find non-discrimination testing, and if it applies to us or not, and on what plans? Basically, just if she wants to double click.
Yeah. Well, it will apply to you. Again, if you're offering any benefit that you're allowing people to pay on a pre-tax basis, it will apply to you. So, and you can, if you have a cafeteria plan vendor, they will be able to do the testing, probably for a fee, but they'll be able to do it. Any payroll provider can do the testing. You should leverage your Nava broker, because they're going to have relationships with other companies that can do that testing for you. I mean, I will say, I don't want anybody losing sleep at night over cafeteria plan discrimination testing. If you are charging the same premium to all employees, I mean, a difference between single and family, but everybody's treated the same, and that's all you're doing, you pass your testing. There's a safe harbor, you don't have to worry about it. Where the discrimination testing is going to become a little more complicated is if you charge your highly paid employees maybe a little less for benefits than your rank and file, or if you have flexible spending accounts, either medical or dependent care accounts, those come with different non-discrimination testing requirements.
Yeah, I think that's a great nuance. We had a question from Eva. She said, is the minimum increasing for 2024, or is it remaining the same? I think that was.
Brandon, you know which minimum or where we're going?
I think it was on the first section around maybe minimum essential coverage.
No, that's not changing. So I mean, what changes when you talk about minimum essential coverage is affordability. So there are various ways to measure whether health insurance is affordable to employees, and that percentage or the way you determine affordability changes every year based on cost of living adjustments.
Yeah, perfect. And then Janice had a question about 1095s. She said 1095s come from payroll and the carriers. Is that necessary that it comes from both?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It is. If you've got a fully insured plan, it's going to come from both, because the carriers are going to have the information regarding the quality of the coverage that you're offering. And then the employer is going to have the information regarding affordability and whether everybody was offered coverage during the year.
Yep, exactly. It's great. Let's dive into election review. This one, it's not, I think it's a bit broader out of the box than sort of what you call typical compliance, but it is so important. So let's hit it.
Yeah, this is one where this applies to employers of all size. So under 50, over 50, doesn't matter. Again, it's primarily focused on employers that allow their employees to pay benefits on a pre-tax basis. Whenever Congress gives you a tax break, they're going to put strings on that tax break. And there is a tax break involved with the cafeteria plan. Employees can pay for their medical insurance on a pre-tax basis. That's a tax benefit. In exchange for that tax benefit, Congress passed a rule that basically says when you make an election under a cafeteria plan to sign up for health insurance, medical, dental, whatever, that is an irrevocable election that covers the whole year. There are exceptions. So if certain big things happen in your life, like you get married or you have a kid, you can make changes. But absent qualifying life events, your election that you make to start the year, you're going to live with that for the whole year. As a result, I think it's a good idea for the HR teams to be proactive this time of year, now and in maybe the first couple of weeks of January, to actually go and monitor some of those elections. I hate to ask you to babysit your employees at times, but sometimes doing that babysitting on the front end will save you a lot of headaches at the end. So, for example, if you've got your president or CEO who has always elected medical coverage, and for some reason this year you notice that that person did not elect medical coverage, it's probably worth your time to pick up the phone and call the president and CEO and say, what's going on? Because once we get past the first of the year, we're not going to be able to make changes. Now, the other part I'll say about that is the IRS will give you a little bit of leeway if you catch mistakes very early on. So, and everybody on this webinar will have their own nightmare stories to share, but everybody's been through it.
Yeah.
Somebody enrolled in a dependent care spending account, and they don't have any kids.
Yeah.
Not a really good decision, but they clearly clicked the wrong button when they were enrolling for benefits.
Yeah.
So after the first payroll, they noticed that $100 came out for dependent care spending accounts. They pick up the phone and say, well, I didn't mean to do that. The IRS will generally say that if you catch a mistake, usually within the first payroll, maybe the second payroll, the IRS is not going to lose any sleep over you unwinding that mistake and making a change. But if you don't catch that mistake, either as the employee or as HR, until February, March, April, it's going to be too late. So you'll save yourself a lot of headaches as an HR team if you are proactive in taking a look at the elections and at least flagging the ones that really don't seem to make a lot of sense on their face.
Well said. This is a huge area of pain that we see in the community that we serve too. And I think maybe I'll expand on as well. I think that auditing elections is a really important but painful process for for folks. And I think what we typically see is like the downside of not doing election audits, whether it's Ben admin election audits and it's carrier bill audits, to determine were people left off of the actual election, were they added to a line of coverage but didn't elect or mistakenly elected, or the third one is they've got the wrong elections. They were added to the HDHP, but they should have been on the PPO. Cause either financial problems where the employer is paying for employees that are not of the company, or they cause like friction problems and usage problems for employees. Hugely important. I think a couple of things that I highly recommend is that we, at Nava, this is sort of a core thing that we do, which is we've got an auditing platform that makes this much easier for us to do. So we take on the job of the annual enrollment elections review, auditing, and then correcting of errors. Really, plus one to your point, John, I think it's like those first couple of weeks of January, or the first two pay periods of January, really sort of that critical window to identify the errors, and then go correct those errors. Here's a crazy stat. So we audit hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of carrier bills. Pretty much we can guarantee now, based on the data, that 9 out of 10 of those bills has a material error that needs to get corrected. 9 out of 10, which is just absolutely mind-blowing. It kind of boggles my mind as a person who builds sort of technology organizations that can be that error prone. But those are big issues. Those are issues where your CFO isn't elected in the right dental plan, or has the wrong account. So it's super important. Very, very kind of like timely too. I think we've got a couple of questions that came into as we were talking. This was a non-discrimination testing question. John, should expats and union employees be included when answering the subjective non-discrimination testing questions?
Yeah, so on some of the non-discrimination rules, you can exclude collectively bargained employees. Expats, if they are eligible for the plan, should be included.
Yep, that's great nuance there. And then Jody had a follow-up. She said, do HSA contributions get included in the testing?
Yeah, HSA contributions, if you're allowing your employees to do pre-tax HSA contributions, those are going through the cafeteria plan. And if the employer is making HSA contributions 99 times out of 100, that's through the cafeteria plan. So it is subject to the discrimination testing.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, just to round out the election review point, we're happy to help on that too. That's something that we do a lot of auditing around, and auditing down to the penny level, not just a name audit, et cetera. And feel free to drop in any questions about the auditing or election review process as we go. Why don't we keep going? Because I think we've got some good meaty questions to sort of follow off of this. And if you'd go back, Aaron, I think we might have skipped one. Are we on it? Why don't we hit this one first? So a question that came in from one of our HR leaders, how do we define a domestic partner? And do we need to provide coverage for domestic partners? If so, how are they taxed?
That's a great question. So there is no federal definition of a domestic partner. Most states, however, will have a definition of a domestic partnership, or perhaps a civil union. Sometimes they use that phrase as well.
Yeah.
The most common elements of the definition of a domestic partner is unrelated, obviously, and unmarried persons sharing common living quarters and living in a committed, intimate relationship that is not legally defined as marriage in the state where they reside. There's lots of nuances on that depending on the state. There's no federal requirement that domestic partners be offered benefits. And I will say it's getting less and less common for employers to offer domestic partner benefits, not because employers are not progressive enough. It's just that now that same-sex individuals can get legally married in this country, there hasn't been as much of a need to extend benefits to domestic partners, because domestic partners, if they are in this committed relationship, can get married regardless of their gender. However, I said no federal requirement. There are some state and city requirements that do require domestic partners to get benefits. California is notorious for that. And in addition, for employers in other states, if you are contracting with a governmental entity, for example, if Kutak Rock, a law firm, is doing work for the city of San Francisco, in our contract, we have to agree to provide domestic partner benefits to folks. So that's an important thing to check. As far as the taxation, this is a nightmare for the HR team. Domestic partners are not entitled to the same federal tax benefits that a legal spouse is entitled to, which means that the premiums that go to pay for domestic partner coverage cannot be paid through the cafeteria plan on a pre-tax basis. And it also means that the value of that coverage to the domestic partner is taxable to the employee. I had Brittany got it, as imputed income.
Yeah.
So what that means is, let's just say single coverage costs an employee $100, and family coverage, and they only have two options, single and family.
Yeah.
Family coverage costs $300. So if an employee wants to add a domestic partner to the plan, they have to enroll in family. And so that's going to cost $300. $100 of that can be paid on a pre-tax basis, and $200 is supposed to be paid as an after-tax premium.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if it's not, because your payroll system can't do that, or you don't catch it, you're going to have to impute that $200 onto the employee's W-2. In addition, if the value of that coverage, just because the employee is paying $100 doesn't mean the health insurance is worth $100. The health insurance could be worth $1,000,
Mm-hmm.
And the employer is paying a hefty subsidy. So if the employee is paying, let's just say, $300 and did it all pre-tax, and the value of single coverage is $1,000, that $700 delta also has to be imputed income on the employee's W-2.
Thanks, John. I know that's nuanced, and we're happy to, this is something that we actually do have a lot of one-on-one conversations with clients to make sure that we are, we're doing the right thing when it comes to pre and post tax. John, we had two, and shout out to Brittany for getting the answer on that one. Brandon and Janet had a similar kind of question theme, which was, do you suggest that domestic partners and married partners provide proof of the relationship? And Brandon had a different nuance look. He said, should we let the burden of proof remain with the employees, or should the employer insert themselves in this burden of proof test for, the domestic relationship?
Yeah, it's a good question. I do think it is a good idea to obtain some level of proof, or at least have the employee attest on a piece of paper that says they're going to get in trouble if they're lying to the domestic partner or the spousal relationship. There's no legal requirement that the employer has to insert themselves, but it will save problems down the road, because the last thing you want to do is tell your employee that, yes, your domestic partner is covered. The domestic partner gets in a horrible accident. The insurance company, they're great at collecting premiums, not as good at paying out benefits.
Yep.
The insurance company does an audit.
Yeah.
And they discover that this person was not a domestic partner, and they deny claims. So you want to try to avoid those problems if you can on the front.
Agreed. And that's good for the employer. That's good for the employee too. So there's just a lot of shared alignment there to say, hey, look, let's align on getting that on paper. That's great. Aaron, why don't we hit the next question? I think we got some good meaty ones in here that came from the HR leaders. Cool. So I think we actually had this earlier too, up in the thread, was like, let's talk about reporting and disclosure requirements, what matters, what's important to know here. You guys are all going to get this slides with some good documentation, so you don't need to write this down and remember it, but maybe John, just hit the highlights here on most important things.
Yeah. We'll show the slides, and so I don't want to spend a lot of time here because it's incredibly boring, but there are tons of federal laws that apply to private sector group benefit plans. You've got ERISA, and then you've got a whole laundry list of federal laws. In addition, you may be subject to state laws that require disclosures. Some of these disclosures can be provided just the first time somebody is eligible for the plan. For example, if you got more than 20 employees, people have to be told when they enroll about COBRA for the first time, and then you don't have to do it again every year. But other notices do have to be provided every year, and it should be a part of your open enrollment packaging and your new hire packaging. Definitely, here's another one where most of the folks here are not going to be experts in understanding the federal requirements and all that, but that's what a good broker will do. And so leverage that relationship. They will help you make sure they know which notices need to be provided. And most of these notices are going to come from the carriers. But leverage that relationship and that knowledge that they have. Yeah,
I think that's well said. And John, you know this, but I think Nava's point of view on this in our role as benefits partner and consultant is where we own the outcome on making our clients aware of what matters and is relevant to them, so that they're not having to sort of stay awake at night going, okay, which disclosure have I missed? Let's keep going. Really interesting. I think we got this question live too in the webinar chat. What's the biggest concern you think an employer should have on their compliance radar for 2024? What should be keeping us up at night? She's encouraging us to pick just one, but you might have another one.
This is one that I want folks to think a little bit about. So a couple of years ago, Congress passed a law that required your broker to tell you as an employer how much they get paid for being your broker. A great rule, great law. Most brokers have no problem disclosing that at all. They're very transparent, and that's great. This rule was modeled after a very similar rule in the retirement industry space about 15 years ago. It required record keepers, investment consultants, things like that, to disclose to employers what they were charging or getting paid to run a retirement plan. Again, great idea, great rule. Well, with the retirement plan rule, we had an unintended consequence that came from that disclosure rule. Now, all of a sudden, you have no defense to say, I don't know what I'm paying my broker. You actually know. And you as a fiduciary have an obligation to make sure that you are paying no more than reasonable compensation. And so there's a burden on you, and now you have a knowledge level. In addition, these disclosures are going out all over the internet, and your competitors are getting it, and other folks are getting it. So as a result of the disclosure 15 years ago in the retirement plan space, a whole industry was born of class action ERISA lawyers. And for those of you that, you can't pick up the Wall Street Journal but once a week, and another large company is getting sued on their 401k plan for having expensive investment options or paying a record keeper too much, all that stuff. I fully expect, maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but it's coming. I fully expect that we're going to see this on the health and welfare side. The granddaddy of the class action litigation space on the 401k plan side is a guy named Jerry Schlichter. And he's made gazillions suing companies on their 401k plans. His firm is currently advertising on LinkedIn to various companies across the country saying, hey, I see in your LinkedIn bio that you're affiliated with this company. We think you're paying too much for health insurance. We think your company is not doing a good job managing healthcare costs, and you're paying more than you should be paying. And they've got advertisements out against, PetSmart, Target, State Farm Insurance, Gordman's. There's a business here I won't name in Omaha, Nebraska that got targeted. It's coming, and he said it's coming. So a lot of companies have done a good job over the last decade in improving their fiduciary governance over their retirement plan. They look at these disclosures. They try to make sure that the fees they're charging participants are reasonable. I think in the next couple of years, we're going to want to get more and more employers to move that discipline they have on the 401k side, move it over to the health and welfare side.
I think it's really well said. I think the obvious question might be like what's the so what or the action to take. I'll take a stab at sort of Nava's perspective on this too. I think what you're seeing on these fiduciary lawsuits is that, hey, we're paying too much for our healthcare. It is that sort of the maybe like the thrust of this, and so it's our view that as we sort of go into the brave new world that John's talking about, the importance of being able to demonstrate that we have gone to market, evaluated alternatives, competitively bid, looked at alternative carriers, et cetera, pressure tested the market. That test will become more important. And so that's something that we're just as a partner trying to really lean into is how do we make it easier for our clients to evaluate their alternatives so that they can demonstrate to their constituents that we have done the best we possibly can. We've acted in a good fiduciary manner when it comes to evaluating our alternatives on the medical, dental, vision, ancillary side. That's pretty complex. Obviously, we all know that building plans. It's also made more challenging given just the wild healthcare inflation that we're seeing when it comes to employer benefits and the cost of health insurance premiums and stuff like that. Christy actually had a good related question. She said, do you recommend employers establish a formal fiduciary committee to monitor whether it's fees or just the cost in general with health and wellness plans? What's the step one? I think it's a great call out. Just what's the step one?
Yeah, no, that's a great softball from Christy, a new Nava employee and a former client of mine. So yes, I do think moving to that fiduciary committee structure that you're used to on the retirement plan side is going to be a really good discipline to have going forward on the health and welfare side.
I think it's great. Great question, Christy. I think just sort of one of my so what's too is I think bring whoever your benefits broker, benefits partner is, bring this to them. Get their point of view on this and the emergence here. Whether they like it or not, they're going to have an incredibly important role in supporting employers in being on the right side of this if and when it emerges. Let's keep going, John. We've got about 20 minutes. I just got that warning. We got some good ones. So HR leader question, what are some strategies, resources to deal with compliance documentation, policy creation, training requirements in orgs that have a presence in almost every state? And you're only a small 2-person total rewards HR team. Lots of our clients fit in this. Nava has employees in 23 states. Yeah, give us your thoughts here. Yeah,
well, I'll do my commercial and then we'll do the Nava commercial. I mean, you can certainly work with an ERISA attorney or consultant to help. But I would also say you're already paying your broker to do this for you. And in my view, that they should be helping, and they will have connections to resources that they can partner you up with as far as that. So that my first starting point, even before you hire a lawyer, you're already paying your broker / consultant. See what they can provide, see how they can help you. If they're not doing business in all 50 states, they have connections certainly with those states and with others in those states. So I would start there if you're a small team and leverage that relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, big plus one. I think that is to me, and sort of, I think one of the one of the big thrusts behind what we're doing too is that the sort of the needs from the modern benefits broker include staying on top of rolling out and abiding by emerging compliance documentation. And you shouldn't need to be a 5,000 person or 10,000 person company to deserve that. You could be 25 or 75 employees. One of the big things that we do too is we've got John and team basically there to be our legal partners when it comes to any of the compliance stuff that delves into ERISA law. A couple of questions here. Sonia, great question. Yes, the answer, do we offer a compliance calendar? We try to also go beyond that, which is like take action and sort of guide the way when it comes to what matters to you versus doesn't, because every employer is different given their size, state, funding arrangement. Niraja asked, can you speak to all the SARs and docs that need to be sent to employees? How do we keep track of all of those? Maybe John, you can touch on, I can hit on sort of the Nava perspective as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, I think your broker will help you know what documentation needs to be provided and when, and may, either store some of that information for you or help you store that information so that you keep that as a record going forward to show compliance.
Plus one. That's something that we help our clients make sure that they're getting done and they're checking all the boxes there. Aaron, let's hit the next question here. What's the best way to stay on top of our state's employee laws to remain in compliance? And then can we talk?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm sounding like a broken record here, but certainly the broker will be the first place I would go to as far as helping there. In addition, some states, most states will have, a website for their Department of Labor, which may have some updates and changes for that state. Departments of insurance, if you're offering fully insured plans, they will also have updates. I know the California is really good at announcing the new laws that that will impact fully insured plans every year. They send that out. You've got your Society of Human Resources organization that you'll be able to leverage on a state level and a federal level. There's a great website. I don't know if many people use it, called benefitslink.com. It's just a great summary news feed of articles, which is great, but there's also the ability to ask questions of your peers and colleagues. And I found that to be very, very helpful when I had no clue about where to go for an answer. I just hop on benefitslink.com and ask that question. And then I think we've got in these materials too, it's somewhat related, but we've got an updated chart on new IRS limits that will apply to health and welfare plans in 2024, which might be a good resource for some of the folks on the call. Yeah.
And you'll all said this in chat, but everyone's going to get access to all of these slides, and there's a pretty robust appendix in here. Let's hit the next question that came in. I think this one was in from John. He said, annual form 5500, when is this due? And do I need to satisfy this requirement, or what are the criteria? What employers are exempt from this?
Yeah. So 5500 is a government form that gets filed on behalf of employee benefit plans, retirement plans, health and welfare plans. The 5500 is generally due by the last day of the 7th month following the close of the plan year. So doing the math for a calendar year plan, it's due July 31st. You can obtain automatic approval, a 2.5-month extension by filing a form prior to July 31st. So a calendar year plan is going to have to get that 5500 done. If you do the extension timely, by October 15th. 5500s are not required for governmental plans or plans not subject to ERISA, like a church plan that's not subject to ERISA. Otherwise, it's generally going to apply. Now, there's a special rule for health and welfare plans.
Yeah.
If you have a fully insured health and welfare plan that covers less than or 100 less or less participants at the beginning of the year, you don't have to do a 5500. If you have a self-funded plan, you have to do the 5500 regardless of how big you are. And self-funded includes level funded plans, which are
Yeah.
becoming more popular. So regardless of your size, if you're self-funded or level funded, you're gonna have to do the 5,500. If you're fully insured, you're only gonna have to do it if you have 100 or more participants on the first day of the plan year. A participant is an employee enrolled on the plan. So not eligible is not enough. They got to be enrolled on the plan.
Yeah.
You don't count spouses and dependents. You just, unless they work at the company. But you just take employees, and then if you covered retirees and any people on COBRA or eligible for COBRA, they would be included in that 100 participant count.
Awesome. Great detailed answer. Feel free to drop into the chat if you guys have any follow-up questions. We've got a related question that came in, somewhat related, question that came in from Megan. Says, who needs a wrap document and how often should it be updated? This is something that we talk about all the time with our HR clients. So John, why don't you educate the group?
Yeah. So I mean, the short answer is nobody needs a wrap document, but a lawyer can never give a short answer. So the longer answer would be if you have multiple health and welfare plans, if you've got a medical, a dental, a vision, life, disability, what have you. I think it makes sense to have a wrap plan, and I recommend it for two reasons. First, if you're subject to the Form 5500 filing requirement, having a wrap plan reduces the number of 5500 filings you have to do. So what a wrap plan is, it's an umbrella that goes and wraps itself around all of your health and welfare plans. So instead of having a separate medical plan that needs a 5500 and a dental plan that needs a 5500 and a life plan that needs a 5500, you wrap those plans and you have company name wrap plan that includes medical, dental, vision benefits, and you just have one 5500. So that's a real nice benefit to having a wrap plan. Regardless of the 5500, even if you're not subject to it, there is still a second benefit. And the wrap plan is a great place to put all that legalese boilerplate that protects you as an employer. You can put your required notices in your wrap plan. You can have information in there regarding when an employee can sue you if there was a mistake, all of your claims filing requirements. It's just a great place to have that kind of belt and suspenders to protect the employer from problems down the road.
Great context. Love it. That was the last of the sort of pre-structured questions. We actually got a bunch in that we were taking good notes on. So I want to hit these, and we'll open up the channel too for additional Q&A in the final 5 minutes. This was action-packed, John. Thank you for going as deep as you went on so many different topics. This is super helpful for the group. I think a big question that came in earlier from Rachel. She said, what happens if we fail our non-discrimination testing for benefits? Like what, talk about the implications.
Yeah. So the practical answer is nothing happens if you don't get caught. The technical legal answer is if you fail non-discrimination testing, any benefits provided through the cafeteria plan to highly compensated employees are taxable. So if that highly compensated employee contributed $5,000 or $3,000 to their flexible spending account on a pre-tax basis, it's post-tax, which means the employer needs to add that compensation back on their W-2. Similar with the premiums that were paid on a pre-tax basis, they become taxable. So technically, if you're a complete rule follower and you catch that, you would be adjusting W-2 compensation and explaining why in that year. And if you're really a rule follower, which I don't know anybody that's going to be this much of a rule follower, and you catch it for prior years, you're doing amended W-2s for prior years. That's the technical legal answer. It's not something I'm necessarily recommending.
Yeah, less practical, more technical. That's great. Kim had a question earlier too. She asked, is there going to be any update to annual tax forms necessary for ACA? Any changes to those tax forms, anything that you know coming down the pipe?
I'm not aware of anything that is coming down the pike on that. No.
Okay, cool. Stacy asked a similar question. Are there any changes to accrual for sick days? coming down the pipeline in 2024?
That is a loaded question. So we've got a couple of clients that have operations in
Yep.
all 50 states. And they have to comply with the paid sick leave laws in
Yep.
all 50 states and many municipalities and local jurisdictions.
Yep.
There are, I don't know the latest count, there's probably about 80 different paid sick leave laws that apply. So are there going to be changes? Absolutely. I think Chicago's got a new one that's pretty broad that's going into effect the first of the year. But that one is one you definitely need to know where you're operating so that you can comply with your particular jurisdiction.
Yeah. That's a good segue. Athena had a similar question, maybe more broad, which is just how can we as an employer stay up to date on state-specific regulation changes that might impact us?
Yeah, it's hard, especially for multi-state employers. Start with the broker. Maybe reach out to your payroll provider. Sometimes they have resources available to you. Check out your local HR organization, whether it's SHRM or another organization like that. And certainly if you have an ERISA lawyer that you're working with, that they're national, they'll know the rules in all those different jurisdictions.
Yeah. It's a +1. Like, I think that's, we're spending a lot of time with our clients, guiding them through that. I think one of the things that's just massively changed over the last 3 or 4 years is that it used to be that you had to be quite a large company to have employees in 25 different states. And now you don't, because of hybrid and remote and sort of the shift that's taking place post-COVID.
Yeah, Brandon, you're right. And the other part that's really changed quite a bit is back in 1974, before I was practicing, back in 1974, they passed ERISA, which was a federal law, and it was designed to prevent all these different states from regulating benefits. It was way too hard to manage all these different states. Well, so for 1974 to, let's say, for 30 years, life was great. We just dealt with ERISA. And then California started passing different laws that regulates paid leave and other benefits. And now everybody's following suit. So we're going right back to pre-1974 times, which makes it really hard to operate effectively.
Yeah, +1 to that. Elizabeth, thank you for answering a question in chat too, by the way. John, Tom had a question. He said, what's the name of that ERISA attorney who is suing companies or approaches that I'm curious about it?
Yeah, his name's Jerry Schlichter, SCHLICHTER.
Okay, got it. Super helpful. I want to do a quick recap. We've got 3 minutes. I think first, let's start like what matters over the next, let's call it 12 weeks, 14 weeks. Over the next 2 weeks, get that gag clause attestation done. If your broker isn't on top of this for you, you should be reaching out to them ASAP. Feel free to reach out directly to us if you have questions. We're happy to help and support there. And then once we get into Q1, what are the top 3 things to have top of mind as actions? Make sure to get those 1095s filed and delivered. Cafeteria plan, non-discrimination testing, getting that started earlier than later. And then election review is a huge one. It's a huge place of financial and maybe operational pain that we can avoid if you get in front of it. That's something that we built into our service offering, so we're happy to help you guys out there. Aaron, why don't we do the outro and just thank everyone for being here. Thank you all for joining us. John, thank you so much for your time, your energy on an arcane topic. You make it fun. That's why we love partnering with you. Hopefully, to those that joined on the channel, hopefully it makes you more confident about what matters over the next 4 months. And don't worry, once we get through Q1, we'll be talking about what we need to do in Q2 so that you have the right stuff. We're going to send out a recording from this call along with a full recap sheet, basically your cheat sheet to all of the context from these questions, gag clause, litigation developments, IRS annual requirements, pending notice stuff. So you'll just have that in your inbox. And then a really fun thing is we just found out we're going to be getting SHRM credit for this session today. So you all will be receiving SHRM credit for this session today. We've got the credit number right there. It's been included. We'll email that to you as well. So just a bonus as we go in. And if you get any specific questions, that we didn't answer, we will follow up on those. So you can just email me directly at brandon@navabenefits.com. We'll get you those answers. And then huge thank you to our clients we've got many clients on this. You've given us really good questions. And last but not least, we're here to help on all things benefits. We're trying to change the game there and trying to broaden the sort of notion of support that you get when it comes to your benefits partner. And John and his team are a big part of that on the compliance side. So thank you all. I hope you all have just a wonderful holiday season. It's been great to see you in the chat. It's been a really fun, active one. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks, John. Take care.